Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Williamsburg City Council work session of February 7th. Ms. Fleeka, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Ramsey?
Here.
Mayor Pons?
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Here.
Mr. Maslin?
Here.
First on the agenda is the consideration and approval of a remote participation request from Councilmember Caleb Rogers for the February 7th, 2022 City Council work session. Mr. Trivett?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rogers has asked if he could participate remotely due to an illness, and in order for him to do that, you have to act on his request.
Is there a motion?
So I move that we approve remote participation for Councilmember Caleb Rogers for today's February 7, 2022 work session.
Second.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Rogers. All right, item 4 on the agenda for City Council meeting is council preview. Thursday's meeting, Mr. Trivett.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So for Thursday, we have a fairly light agenda. We have 2 public hearings having to do with the reapproval of the redevelopment of the Governor's Inn project, and then under new business, authorization to enter into a new contract for a better parking solution for downtown.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? All right, takes us now to a public comment portion of the meeting where anybody in the audience would like to come forward, say a few words to council, they are welcome to do so. Seeing none, we'll close that public comment and go to background presentations and discussions. First, we have an update from the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. James Azilius. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm one of your directors for Soil and Water Conservation, and David Beals is the other. Oh, I'm at the wrong one.
So, why don't you all go
Over
to this
this way.
podium? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right, so I'm James Ilias, the Director of Soil and Water Conservation for the City of Williamsburg, and David Beals is the other Director for Soil and Water Conservation, and this is Robin Woolsey, who is our Urban Conservation Specialist, and she will do the presentation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having us this afternoon. Thanks for some time on your agenda. I think we have a slide. There we go, perfect. So we'll get started with a little overview about the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. We are one of 47 districts across the state, and each one of those districts is considered a political subdivision of the state. Here locally in the Colonial District, we serve Charles City County, New Kent County, James City County, York County, and the City of Williamsburg. This past year, about 60% of our funding has come from the state, and that money is coming from the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. And all of our funding, almost all of it, is tied to specific efforts, so it's all obligated to our specific programs. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the programs that are most relevant to our Williamsburg constituents, the first of which is our education program. So one of our biggest education programs that we support is the Virginia Dominion's Envirothon. And that's essentially a conservation-themed competition for high school students. So these students take extra time throughout the year to learn about conservation and study conservation methods, and then they compete at competitions to test their knowledge throughout the year. So we have regional competitions, we have state competitions, and even an international competition. And we are very proud of our local team at Jamestown High School, who back in 2019 actually won the international competition. So we have a lot of really fantastic students who are involved in the program, and we're always excited to support them throughout the year. More recently, we've also been getting involved with the local science fair. So the Williamsburg James City County School High School Science Fair, I have been involved as a judge for that competition over the past couple of years. And it's been so exciting to get to see all of these different projects that students are working on and all of the different ways that they're investigating conservation and environmental science in their own neighborhoods and backyards and all that good stuff. So very excited to participate in those programs. We also are very proud to partner with the Williamsburg Community Growers, which is a local nonprofit that offers both community garden spaces for community members who want to rent a plot and grow their own produce. And we also have a teaching farm, which is about 1/3 of an acre of just row crop vegetables that is supported almost entirely by volunteers. And almost all of the produce that is grown in that teaching farm is then donated back to local food pantries. So it's a great way to get folks learning about where their food comes from and giving back to their community at the same time. So the Colonial District was a founding partner of that organization, and we continue to provide support up through now. We continue to be a supportive partner. Even just last year, we received funding from the USDA Farm to School program to help strengthen that partnership and get even more students out into the teaching farm and learning about growing produce. We also have urban conservation programs, the first of which is the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. That is geared towards landowners who have a stormwater management problem on their property and might need some help trying to fix it. So through that program, we provide technical advice and assistance to try to figure out a solution that would work well for the property. And then assuming that that landowner is eligible, we can help provide financial assistance to pay for whatever that solution might be. So in these photos here, we have a permeable pavement patio that was put in at a residence here in the city. The homeowner, instead of going for a concrete slab that would just send water into their yard and into the storm drain, they decided to go with this permeable pavement that would allow water to sink into the ground and reduce the risk of flooding and erosion. So we have this practice that we can help with. We also do a lot of rain gardens and rain barrels, lots of different practices to help people improve stormwater management on their property. We also have our Turf Love program, which is a partnership with the Williamsburg James City County Master Gardeners. Through that program, all of our participants receive site visits with a highly trained master gardener who will talk to them about environmentally sensitive lawn care and answer any questions they might have. We also take soil samples so that we can write certified nutrient management plans for each property. Those plans tell the homeowner how to apply their fertilizer safely, how much to apply, when to apply it, all that good stuff, so they're making the right decisions for their property. Last year, we did an episode of the James City County podcast, so we always encourage folks to check that out to learn more. We also filmed a commercial that you can find online if you would like to learn more. And then this is our newest urban conservation program, the Shoreline Evaluation Program. This is an expansion of our partnership efforts with the Master Gardeners. Has a very similar process as the Turf Love program, where we come out onto your property and evaluate stormwater management efforts and look at what is happening on the property as a whole with stormwater. But we're really focusing on looking at the shoreline. So this is geared towards shorefront property owners to help them assess any current or potential erosion threats to their shoreline and help them understand how to best protect their shoreline, not only just to protect their property, but to protect water quality as well. So this program, we've been working on doing a lot of training over the last year, getting ourselves and our volunteers ready to go out and do these site assessments. We have a few more trainings lined up this spring, but we're hoping to officially launch in the next couple of months, where we can really start to take some applications and start figuring out how we can make this program the best it can be for our residents. And then, since we're always thinking about budgets and how we pay for these programs and how we continue to offer them, I provided this table to remind you all of what we have applied for in the past. We have sought assistance for VCAP funds and to administer Turf Love, and then also last year sought assistance for the Shoreline Evaluation Program. Recognizing that we're in budgeting season again this year, we wanted to share with you all the plans that we have for our upcoming fiscal year. We've kept everything the same. We're going to continue working towards our VCAP implementation goals. We'll continue to offer Turf Love to city residents, and then we are again seeking assistance for the Shoreline Evaluation Program now that we're ready to get that kicked off. And then lastly, here's our contact information. We have emails for both of our directors, and then emails for myself and our district manager, Jim Wallace. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, thank you for each of you for coming today and giving us the update on what you all do. Seems like this year's presentation was a little different. Maybe I just heard it differently, but I really appreciate your efforts in getting into the schools to kind of work with the young people and kind of helping them foster good conservation ideologies and, you know, future leaders of America, so to speak. So, again, thank you so much. Vice Mayor, any comments?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but thank you for the presentation. And as the mayor alluded to, oftentimes we may not realize everything that you do. So thank you for the programs that you do, all the conservation programs, and making effective use of the funding that's provided from the city.
Yeah, thanks. So in other communities, we see conservation commissions that actually weigh in with planning commission issues and applications. We have, seems like an overlap here in terms of where the planning commission is looking at things such as stormwater management impact and requiring us to approve waivers on developing on slopes more than 30%. Is there any involvement with your team on these issues?
Not historically in Williamsburg. We have had some instances of working together with the Planning Commission in James City County. Certainly something that we could look into, though, and provide whatever assistance we could.
All right, thank you.
And I too would like to thank you for coming in. Every year I'm reminded of all the good work you do, so that's very helpful. I did have one question. You mentioned getting that $96,000 grant, I think it was from the USDA. Is that something new? It seems rather large, and I didn't know if it was a new program and what exactly you planned on doing with it as far as the, I guess, Community Growers Program.
Yeah, it is new. We were awarded in July of 2021. So we have gotten about 6 or 8 months into the grant. We have 4 main goals through the grant, and so it's a partnership between ourselves, Colonial District, and the Williamsburg Community Growers. So most of our efforts focus on increasing high school student involvement at the teaching farm. So encouraging students to come out and volunteer and participate in some service learning activities. From that pool of high school volunteers, we also have funds to hire 6 interns who will get to expand their experience a little bit into the garden. And we also have funds to have each of them take on a special project, so something that they're really interested out on site. We have some money to help them get those projects onto the ground. We also have procurement goals with each of the 3 high schools in the school system, where we will be, this year we are donating produce back into the school system, so students get to see really from seed to finished product all of the efforts of their labor. So they'll grow these vegetables and then they'll see them back in their cafeteria meals again. So we have funds to support that effort. And then we also are hoping to get students more involved in our farm stand that we host out at the teaching farm every Saturday. So getting some help with marketing and spreading the word about the program, or about the farm stand. And then we also have some students who really enjoy manning the farm stand and selling produce and talking to customers and all of that. So really looking forward to expanding those 4 efforts.
Good. Thank you for the description of all of that.
Of course.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you both very much for the presentation today. I'm sorry that I have to be the big head on the screen. I have no questions. It was a thorough presentation. I noticed you're requesting the same amount that was provided last year. My only comment would be the city is now and has been for the last year plus some change pursuing new environmental goals. So I wonder how we can wrap in the projects that you already have and are doing successfully into some of the work that our committee of department heads is looking into. So I hope we can stay in touch on that. And again, thank you for coming.
Certainly. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
And speaking on behalf of your representatives for Williamsburg.
Come up to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Dave Beals. I'm one of the directors. If there's anything that we can do to help you with questions such as Mr. Rogers brought up, or these other environmental questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. And particularly your directors. I think we had the contact information. Drop us an email, and if we can help you, or people in your district that have got various soil and water conservation, particularly with soil erosion, which happens around here. But we also have funding for rain gardens, all kinds of other things that we can do. I know that I asked Robin to help come and look at one of my friend's churches was having an erosion problem, and we had a consult to them. So we're available to help, and please call on us. We're here.
Thank you.
We're here to help.
I hear there's a problem over there in College Woods. It was in the paper. East Coast Grand Canyon or something. Well, again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Takes us now to presentation from the Occasion for the Arts detailing the 2021 highlights and plans for 2022. Ms. Scribala.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons and members of City Council. This year, an Occasion for the Arts received $25,000 from the city in outside agency funding. They've requested the same amount for FY23. So today you will be hearing a presentation from Occasion for the Arts President Nancy Wigley and Vice President Rachel Williams. After a virtual event in 2020, the occasion returned to its in-person format in 2021. So they will be giving an overview of how that went and a sneak peek as to what's coming for this coming fall.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back in person again this year. It was good to be back in person at our show as well. Click forward. There we go. So yes, 2021, October 2nd and 3rd were absolutely glorious days. The weather was outstanding. The crowds were huge. The people were happy. They spent a lot of money, and the artists were happy. So it was a happy weekend. We had over 140 artists, so obviously our virtual show last year did not dim anyone's interest in coming back for the live show. We had 16 live performances, a robust youth art exhibition with a theme this year, My COVID Experience. We had new displays. We had an enhanced community area as well. We are continuing our partnership with Steve Prince at the Muscarelli. We had the William Mary Tyler McLeod Wellness Center doing some presentations and some sponsor booths as well this year. So the artists came from 27 different states. That's actually a little smaller than we normally get. And we feel like it was a little more regionalized this year due to the pandemic. People just a little less willing to travel that far. But we still got the number of artists, and it was still a beautiful show. Sales were reported to be above average. Media included everything from painting to sculpture, jewelry, ceramics, photography. Really anything that you could desire in the arts world was there to be seen in all its glory and all its color and all its passion. We did do 16 live performances. This is actually down from our previous live shows. We did eliminate one stage, which is normally on Prince George Street, and we just reutilized that space. But it did include music from all genres, including some ballet and some magic. And there were people there from the first thing Saturday morning until we closed the show on Sunday afternoon. Very, very well attended for every venue. And of course, always happy to have the fife and drums starting the show for us on Sunday morning. We do make announcements each day from the stage, and we did about 4 a day. Always acknowledging the support we get from the City of Williamsburg, the Williamsburg Arts Commission, and our presenting sponsor, which very fortunately for the last several years has been Bank of America. So we do make sure that for the people who are in the audience at that time, that we are making sure that you are getting the accolades that you deserve for supporting us. Our youth art tent looked fabulous this year. All new displays, thanks to a grant from the Williamsburg Area Arts Commission. They were so easy to put up and so easy to take down, and the displays, they just made the art look, the teachers were thrilled, just thrilled with how professional their students' art looked, how much easier it was to install, that the flow was so much better. They loved the location on Prince George Street. It felt like they were so much more a part of the show on that end of Prince George rather than in previous years it's on the other end of Prince George, and they felt like they were kind of pushed off to the side. And we really made sure that we tried to make that whole area on Prince George a cohesive community area. And again, we did a new theme this year, My COVID Experience, and the teachers did like that. We're going to be reaching out to teachers very early this year with the theme for next year, so they have the entire semester to work on it. We haven't decided what it is yet, but we will be reaching out. So the community area, Steve Prince is just a force to be reckoned with. As somebody said, he could talk to you about a stop sign and make you believe it was cultural art. He's part artist and part minister, part preacher. He's just an amazing person, and we're so glad that he continues to partner with us and do these amazing public art projects. We did offer community sponsorship locations this year, so it was we went to pay to play. If you were willing to purchase a sponsorship at a $2,500 level, then you got a tent. And we just required that each of these sponsors do a public art activity as well. And it was well received. We had 3 of those sponsors this year. And then, of course, as always, the food and the beer and the wine area was extremely popular. And I love our partnerships with those vendors. We couldn't do this show without volunteers. The weekend of the show, we have over 70 volunteers of all ages and from all backgrounds that help make this weekend possible. The AOFTA Board of Directors, of which we are a part of, we are all volunteers, and we all have full-time careers. So this is a big effort for us, but every time I ask somebody whose 3-year term has come up, do you want to re-up for 3 years? They almost always say, yes, I love what I do, and I love being a part of this organization. So, plans for 2022. One plan I just do want to throw out there is that this year, after 13 years with an Occasion for the Arts, this is my final year. Don't you want to do it again? This is my 4th year as the president. I feel like I have probably given it all I can give, and it might be time for me to move on to some other areas. But I am extremely fortunate to have this lovely young lady standing behind me, Rachel Williams, who is currently our vice president, who is willing and able to step into my shoes and take this organization forward. And she's going to tell you what we have plans for in 2022.
So much, Nancy, and we really could not have accomplished what we did last year and throughout all of the pivoting, switching to a virtual in 2020 in order to allow us to have some sort of presence for an Occasion for the Arts in Williamsburg. So Nancy is a phenomenal person that makes this happen, everything from setting up all of the tents and 7 a.m. and running around with tablecloths. It is fully, we wouldn't be here if we didn't love it, truly. So we really are fortunate to have great leadership and great community support. For our 2022 season, we saw the excitement, we saw the happiness of everyone that came back into Merchant Square and joined us for the event. We were fortunate that we had beautiful weather, so we are hopeful that for 2022, October 1st and 2nd, this will be our 54th Occasion for the Arts Festival. We are hoping to do something for our longtime supporters that have dedicated, attended our events, have made individual contributions, to give them a little special, and also the community something fun and special to do as we safely can do, as we are kind of trying to go back into coming together and finding opportunities for our community to come together and appreciate all that we have in this area. So we're looking at doing a Friday night donor event for we roughly have about 50 to 60 individuals that every year make a small contribution in addition to generous corporate sponsors that kept us going during our virtual land. So we will plan to host an outdoor ticketed event for these sponsors, which will also host kind of a preview, a sneak peek of all of the artists that are setting up throughout that day, kind of your first dibs as a loyal and dedicated supporter for our arts. Also enjoying and taking part in working with our local music, having a featured band on stage, as well as working with catering to bring to a special event that's something different. So that would take place the Friday night, September 30th, prior to occasion for the weekend. One of the biggest focuses that we saw this past year was just the engagement and the excitement of our youth program. We had a huge attendance at our youth art building. When Steve Prince was putting together his community project on Saturday morning, I think within an hour we were full because of the excitement that we saw children kind of taking part in this community art project, going into the tent and saying, oh, hey, Mom, there's my work that I did. And so what we want to do is expand that, and we want to expand our reach more than just one weekend a year. So what we're looking to do is to start an Artist in Residence program for our 2022 Arts Festival. So this program will put a well-known artist into a school system for a 1 to 2 week immersive project that will result in impressive art installation into that school. This is great for our students, our artists, and it also helps us to, again, span throughout the one weekend. In the first year of doing this, we are hoping to secure a local artist. We have so many talented artists in the greater Williamsburg area, so we are looking to do that and to build and expand upon the successes that we've seen with our student art projects. So in addition to kind of our youth art, our community events that we will have with the festival, looking to build and expand and greater collaboration with the Williamsburg James City County Schools, and also initially looking this year to try to secure additional funding with the Virginia Arts Commission, just to bring a well-known additional support into this project. Again, as we look forward, we are working on our plans right now, and as Nancy stated, we are incredibly fortunate for the support that we have from the community, from the City of Williamsburg for your continued support, and we thank you so much. We could not do what we do without your support.
Well, thank you, Nancy and Rachel, but first, Nancy, thank you for your 13 years on the board. Volunteering, is a labor of love, but sometimes there's a need, sometimes you feel like you have to move on, and so I do respect that, and your efforts have made the occasion a wonderful thing that it is. I mean, it's a crown jewel event for us in Williamsburg. I know it's something that I enjoy going to every year, and I think I saw you out there this past year, and we're going to put a resolution in to make sure the weather for next year will be just the same.
No worries, I'm in charge of weather.
Oh, you got the weather?
Got it.
Okay.
I got it.
But it was a beautiful weekend, and even when it rains, it's a lot of fun. Obviously, it diminishes a little bit, but it sounds like your 2022 plans are going to be exciting and robust. I appreciate some of the outreach stuff that you were talking about in collaboration with the WJCC schools to kind of extend the event, and the Artist in Residence seems like a great opportunity to really immerse, the students in art in a way that they probably haven't seen it before. So I really appreciate that and looking forward to 2022. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, and thank you both. And as the mayor said, this is a signature event for Williamsburg. And Nancy, specifically to you, when you started out your presentation, you can hear the excitement and passion for an occasion for the arts. And I'm sure that everyone that came last year had that same excitement to be out again. And, we didn't think we'd still be working with a pandemic. Who knows what October will bring, but hopefully it's going to be another huge success again, by what the plans you have laid out for 2022. The only question I have, and I know it's not a ticketed event, there's not one entry. Do you have anybody in your organization that just kind of estimates what the crowds might have been for the two-day event?
So we had an interesting conversation with the police department 2 years ago, because we had for many years said, well, the police estimate that there's like 20 to 30,000 people. And he goes, we did? And he said, how did we do that? And I said, I don't know. We just always kind of assumed that you did it. And so somewhere along the line someone did, but they haven't anymore. It is a very, very challenging to estimate how many people are there, just because of the scope, because of the people coming and going. But if you just kind of look at crowd size at any given moment and say, okay, well, say this crowd turns over 5 times a day, which it probably does, over a period of 2 days, I think it's safe to say there were 20,000 people there, and possibly more. It was crowded. It was crowded, and I actually talked to some people who gave up, trying to come because they couldn't find a place to park. So it's very challenging, but I can assure you it was way more than 5,000.
Thank you.
I've put on events with 5,000 people at it. It was way more than that.
Mr. Maslin?
We try to stay nonpartisan, so I'm not going to touch estimating crowds for these types of events. But no, it was great, and I remember in the beginning trying to get, a little panic trying to get the stage open, right? Did that work out okay?
Oh yeah, just a little disconnect in the timing. But what about looking at Visit Williamsburg in terms of the broader picture? When you're marketing Occasion for the Arts, is there a way, when people are actually looking in to buy their tickets, is there a link to actually, for them to see what else is happening in Williamsburg and hotels and restaurants? So we do partner with Visit Williamsburg, and we make sure that we are on their materials and that we're on their website. So when people are looking for us, they should be able to see other things as well. I should mention that a lot of the funding that we get from the City of Williamsburg helps us with a very robust marketing campaign. We partnered with Consolidate Media last year for the first time, and they were outstanding. And their attention to our social media and creating, it was all about creating a story for us this year and creating a brand for us this year. And they have this acronym called Create Once, Use Over and Over, or something like that. I can't remember what it is.
Rinse and repeat.
But it's the idea that this year we were creating things, and next year they can use pieces of what they created this year to even grow things. And so our actual print media, unpaid media, was down a little bit, but money was spent to create new things, create pieces, create a story that we'll be able to use in the future with more advanced paid media.
Yes, we did have a videographer and photographer the entire weekend capturing everything for the weekend. So we have a lot of great collateral that we'll be able to use in terms of our marketing promotion efforts for the weekend leading up for Williamsburg. So we've done multimedia as well, which is the first time that we've done that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming in and giving us sort of a recap from 21. Reminds us of the great weather and the entire weekend. And Vice Mayor Dent and I are members of the fairly newly created Williamsburg Public Art Council, so it's nice to know that that initiative will be started in the schools and help students at a young age appreciate the value and importance of public art. I also was pleased that you all were able to take advantage of the chairs and tables that were positioned on Dog Street and move them, create the courtyard, which I think is the parking lot behind Merchant Square area, and turn that into a very viable, vibrant weekend event for entertainment and food and beverage.
And I know it was a huge effort to move those tables and chairs for that weekend. But it created a wonderful atmosphere back there. I mean, just really, it just felt very festival-y. And people took advantage of them the entire weekend. And so, yeah, we were very, very appreciative and understand the effort that went into to getting them moved. So we were very appreciative of that, and it did work beautifully and saved me a bunch of money.
Well, I think it also just created a very nice cohesive area downtown so that you had the youth on Prince George, and then you had all of the activity going on in the courtyard, and then all of the artists on Dog Street, and it showed what can happen when you take advantage of the spaces we have and just mix things up a little bit. So I was glad to see that, and from your plans, it sounds like you anticipate doing the same thing for 2022. So, thank you.
If the city is willing.
Mr. Rogers.
Nancy and Rachel, thank you very much for this presentation. I have no questions, but only a comment. How well I remember last year's presentation, Nancy, and hearing how Occasion for the Arts had become a virtual event. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for all the years of service to the city and putting this on, and especially the last couple, seeing it through virtuality. Rachel, you have some big shoes to fill. I'm sure you'll do very well. So thank you all both very much.
Well, thank you both for coming in again, and Nancy, much appreciation for all your years of service.
You know, I had no choice in this. My mother used to run this show.
Yeah.
It was in my blood.
Well, I know Rachel's going to step up and do an excellent job as well and continue the tradition set by your family. So thank you both for coming in.
Very much.
Okay, takes us to item C, presentation and addition of budgetary information to the city's performance dashboard. Again, Mr. Barham.
Turn on my microphone. I feel like if I didn't do that, it'd be like, you're on mute, Mr. Barham, you're on mute. It's the new thing. Good afternoon, Mayor Pons, members of council. We talked about this last month where we debuted the new performance dashboards. And at that time, I told you that there was a new component coming to them. We're going to talk about that today. First, just a little quick kind of recap of the dashboards themselves. The first page is what we call the performance introduction. It's kind of how the site's laid out and what it hopes to accomplish, followed by the performance summary, which gives you a quick visual indication of the 6 major goal areas, how we're performing relative to the initiatives underneath of those goal areas. And then finally, we get into the individual goals. The 6 goals are lined up on the left, followed by the departmental operating reports, as well as the newsletters, which are now organized by year, thanks to a request from Ms. Trifoni. So the goal here, you see this, they're all the same, as I've said. All the KPIs are underneath within each individual goal, so you can see again the visual indication on the individual KPIs. And then scrolling down to the why it matters section, which is just again a textual based information about why this particular goal matters, what are we doing about it. Follows that next, which is where all the initiatives live. You can see all the individual initiatives in terms of their start date, when they're, if they are completed, they have an end date, and their current status. Again, the visual indication of red being no progress, yellow being in progress, and green being complete. Next is resident satisfaction survey data that we've incorporated in. This goes, the latest is 2020. This goes back to, I believe, 2008. So you can see all of that resident satisfaction survey data in context within the goal that it represents. And then last, and what we're here to talk about today, is what we're calling, how much does it cost? So this opening paragraph talks about the city's budget, how we budget, and then how the funds are divided, and then what's kind of brought to bear, if you will, within each of these individual goals. So then you get down, if I can find my mouse over here. So now you'll see the amount budgeted for the goals.
I think the important part that's talked about in that preamble is the fact that this is not new money, it's not additional money. This is just a different illustration of the adopted budget. So a project-based budgeting look at how we accomplish the work that you've assigned us.
So then here you'll see the amount that's budgeted for this particular goal is $2.971 million. One of these days I'm going to get a different keyboard for this. And then the percentage, that's a percentage of the total. So 5.7% of all the money that's allocated for these initiatives to complete each one of these goals. Of that 100%, 5.7% is used on One Williamsburg. So you can see that kind of in context right here. Scrolling over each individual one, you can see the amount, in this case, innovating a modern city or prioritizing safety and wellness. And if you go down, it breaks it down further by category. So now you can see the individual initiatives underneath each of the goal areas. In this case, One Williamsburg, event support is 1.9 million, Parks and Rec ADA is 865,000, and then so on and so forth. So you can see the amount of money that is allocated to each individual initiative. Again, a common theme throughout the dashboard, if you see these arrows, you can scroll through, there's something else behind that, and this will break it down by department. So now you can see the responsible department for the particular goals or the particular initiatives under the goal, how much of that money is allocated by department. And then last, if you want to see it by initiative and department, you can see this chart that then breaks it down by the initiative, the amount, and then out at the bottom by the department. So that's the fourth leg, if you will, of the new performance dashboards, adding all this budgetary information in there. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, no questions. Just thank you again, Mark, for you and all the staff for all the hard work that's gone into this to try to make us as transparent as we can possibly be.
I agree. Thanks, Mark.
I agree too, and I particularly like the visual graph aspect. I think it makes it very easy for non-finance people to grasp and get a good feel of how the money's being allocated and the progress towards the goals. So thank you.
Thanks very much to you and your team, Mark. Only one question. If you could estimate it, how many cities, maybe by percentage, also report data to the level that Williamsburg does that are also around our size?
Councilman Rogers, that's somewhat of a loaded question that I wouldn't dare guess. I'll say in Virginia, not many. That's going to be my best guess.
Sounds like we're in the upper echelons. So A+ to you and your team, and thank you for all of your work. This is really amazing to see.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And again, this is designed to provide residents with all the information that could be available to them in an easy, understandable format. So it has taken a lot of effort and time. So we're excited to have it up and running. Thanks, sir. Takes us now to item D, presentation and discussion of the 2017 parking study implementation. Mr. Trivett.
Thank you, Mayor. So what we thought we'd do today is just sort of do a refresher course on the 2016 Walker parking study and how we have been slowly implementing it since then. In 2017, let me get to this slide. This tells you the story. City of Williamsburg has been working on parking for quite some time. As you can see here, the various versions unfold. Really, since '95, have you been taking a hard look at parking. In 2016, we did the Walker parking study. In 2017, a staff team was assembled to consider the recommendations of the study and identify a best path forward in terms of how we could implement their findings and really dig in and identify which ones were best for Williamsburg to pursue and in what order. So we thought we would just give you a little bit of a refresher on this. This is the results from the study. You all remember the tagline very well. There really is not a shortage of parking spaces in the study area, but there is a perception of a shortage in the study area. And as we said then and continue to say now, the perception of a parking problem is a parking problem because it inhibits people from coming downtown if they think it's going to be challenging to find a space. So here are the numbers: 4,326 total spaces at that time in the study area. And the important part of this is just those percentage numbers at 2 p.m. You can see there, what we're shooting for is around 95% occupancy. That means that the parking plan is being used efficiently to its maximum, but still has some open spaces for people to occupy. So this shows you sort of the deficits that we were running at the time of the study and the occupancy rates on the whole, even for the weekends and weekdays, and then forecast that out to 2026. So basically doing a fairly simple build-out model for the study area and then applying the parking demand to it. And even in 2026, with those sort of exaggerated development trends, only 69% of the available parking was occupied. So here are just some key findings I wanted to pull out of the study because I think they say it best in terms of the analysis. Our assessment of parking needs in the downtown area indicates that the city's parking shortage is a problem of perception rather than an actual scarcity of parking. Next is, although parking shortages are expected on some blocks, overall adequate parking is available with the study area to support demand over the next 10 years. So just illustrating that they did forecast it forward, even though this study now has got some age on it. The proposed changes are intended to help improve the overall delivery of parking services. These recommendations are based on input from stakeholders directly impacted by the public parking policy and practices. In addition, the recommendations reflect Walker's analysis of current and future parking conditions and assessment of current operations. I think it's important for us to remember, the reason I put this one in there, that the results of the study, and I'm going to show you another slide in a second that illustrates this, really came from conversations with stakeholders, users, daily users of the parking system, and identifying what their problems were, and then Walker trying to find solutions to address those problems. And then finally, the challenge now becomes effectively utilizing the existing parking resources. And so you just sort of have to keep that flow in mind. There's not a parking shortage. The stakeholders told us what was wrong. And now to fix that problem, we need to effectively utilize what we have. So here is the slide I was talking about. On the left-hand side, you've got the parking system user issues. These are the issues that were brought to the Walker consultant's attention. Inconsistent or lack of enforcement was number one. Cruising for a spot as a challenge was number two. Clock watching, et cetera, et cetera. On the study side, on the right, you've got the recommendations to try and address those issues. And there's not necessarily a correlation between the numbers. It's just that's the order that they were in. And so the staff team in 2017 was assembled to evaluate these 9 recommendations to determine which ones would have the most impact and in what order we should pursue them. So what was our motivation for change on the staff team that was looking at this? It was really pretty simple. We wanted to provide a positive experience, and so address those stakeholder user issues so that when you use the parking system downtown, you come away at least not with a negative experience. So here are those 9 recommendations again, and the results of the staff team's evaluation. There was really only one that we felt like did not have merit to pursue at the time, and that was the shared parking agreements with the private lots. The study considered a shared parking agreement with the churches along Richmond Road and using those parking lots behind those facilities on Prince George, I think it was Scotland Street. Can't remember now which one it is. And the staff team really just felt like they were too far away to really address the complaints of the users. And so we put that sort of on a back burner. And the rest of these became things that we wanted to consider moving forward. So we put together this implementation plan. Hopefully those of you who were on council remember. It was a phased plan, and it wasn't necessarily sequential. If you remember, what we said at the time was that we would keep pursuing these phases of improvement until we had reached the desired outcome. And so is the system providing a positive experience? That's really our benchmark. And at the heart of the Walker recommendations is turnover. You may remember the longer version of this presentation. We showed you a couple videos from Professor Shoup. He's the parking guru in the United States, and he has a mantra. It is possible in any city in America to have one space open on every block most of the time. And to me, that would be a positive experience. If you can go to where you want to go and find an open space, you're going to come away thinking that the parking system is working and doing what it's supposed to. And so he feels like you can do that with data and with correct policies in place. So if you look at these phased approaches, we've sort of dabbled in and out of phase 1 and phase 2. The biggest issue that we have had is that this plan, even in 2017, was based on a robust hardware and software program that would provide us the necessary data to fully understand what was happening in the parking spaces downtown relative to occupancy. Also enable us to do more efficient enforcement, as well as provide convenience features for the public. And so the IT director and I spent a lot of time evaluating hardwares and softwares and really concluded that what we were looking for just wasn't ready for prime time yet. And so we gave it some time. And in the last 2 years, a company has stepped forward and said, we think we can do what you need us to do. And so we're prepared to move ahead with that. And so this refresher is really to just prepare the city, the public, and the city council, remind you of where we were headed, and present to you that option. In discussions with you in preparation for our conversation, I think I have said this, and I want to say it again for the public's benefit. This investment in a new parking software and hardware is not a certainty that we move to paid parking. It doesn't eliminate that as a possibility. As you can see here, it's in the phased plan and ultimately is a component of the successful management of parking in most cities. Paying for convenience is a factor, and it helps spaces turn over and certainly creates that situation where in the high demand blocks, you have a space open when you're looking for one. But the first step is to install the hardware and the software that we need to understand parking generally. And at this point, I can tell you that we still don't have a full grasp on that. What we'd like to do is proceed with a company called Fiber. It's on your agenda for Thursday to consider, to install sensors in each of the parking spaces in the study area, including in the residential permit areas. And those sensors will tell us when the space is occupied. And it also gives us the ability to do much more advanced permitting and enable greater convenience for the user so that they really don't have to fuss with parking if they are a daily user, meaning a resident of Williamsburg, and also provides convenience for those people who are looking for spaces downtown to just see what space is available when. So that they're not circling the block 2 or 3 times or going to a parking lot that's already at capacity. The end result of that is that we will have the data to understand the parking situation downtown so that we can recommend to City Council if another step needs to be taken, particularly as it relates to, are we getting the occupancy level that we're after? Are we getting the efficiency of parking use that we want in that 90 to 95 percentile of usage? And so that's really where we're at. I've got a bunch more slides to talk about how the sensor system works, but I thought what I would do in the interest of time is just pause there and answer any questions. And if we need to show those other slides, we can, although they don't necessarily directly apply to Williamsburg because all we're doing is installing the hardware and the software. One other note that I wanted to make is that we did install a new software in the parking garage, and pretty much everybody probably remembers it wasn't a great success rolling it out. Unfortunately, it wasn't entirely the software's fault. The company that we had contracted with was purchased mid-implementation, which complicated what we could offer and what we were going to get from it. Learning from that experience, what we intend to do this time is employ the hardware, deploy the software internally, make sure that it's operating the way that to our satisfaction before we roll it out to the public. So even though the City Council may authorize this contract on Thursday, it will likely be at least 6 months, maybe longer, before there's any change in the parking policies or procedures downtown, including software and hardware for the public.
Any questions for City Manager?
No, just a couple of comments, maybe a question or two. I know, as you indicated early on, the city's been looking at parking for essentially since 1995. And I know several of the things you've mentioned about software, and that's most of the complaints that I've heard from users currently is a software issue, whether it's been in the garage or one of the other lots that they find challenges with that software. So the opportunity for us to take advantage of some technology, as we talked about, all these smart city options that are out there, that there's technology out there that could improve our parking process is an advantage. So with the current system, is there an opportunity to just expand the current system without moving into a new system? Kind of a rhetorical question, since I've said most of the complaints we've heard have been on the current system.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, because as I said, this phased implementation plan was always meant to be, we keep going until we don't need to go any further. And that's really a policy question for the city council, is how far down this list do we go? And so what I would say, the answer to that is absolutely, we could expand the current system to encompass more areas. We're not going to get any better data than we have right now on occupancy and usage. We're just going to get better control over the spaces. And so what I would say is, if the community and the city council are happy with where we are right now with our parking system, then we shouldn't invest this money to go the next step. I think this investment only makes sense if we intend to make things better, to make an improvement. And the only way that we can do that from an informed position is to have this system, which will give us the greatest amount of data on usage.
But I think it was important to point out also that this doesn't mean parking is going to change next week. If this is approved by city council, that we're sometime out from implementation, and that there's going to be some beta tests to prove that this is going to be a better step for us in our parking challenges.
That's right.
That's all I have.
Madison?
Hey, Drew, could you pull back up slide 8 of 19, Walker Study Team Evaluation, Staff Recommendations 2017? Right after that. Oh, I thought.
I think that's the beginning, Ted. Which slide was it?
So it says Walker Study Team Evaluation, Staff Recommendations 2017. I thought it was right after that one.
This one.
Yeah. So I think it'd be helpful for the public to understand what the updates are, what we've actually done since 2017. So if we go down this list, Consolidate Operations and Management, with the several years ago with the change in administration at Colonial Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg actually improved 2 of the parking lots from a safety standpoint for better lighting. And that was P2 and P4. They protected, at this point, they protected the 2-hour free parking, which was there before, but they allowed parkers to extend their time there at their convenience to pay for it. So that seemed to be a win-win for many people. We've also seen that the passport system, which the city is using now, is also being used by Colonial Williamsburg and William and Mary for their visitor parking. So it's either by design or luck, we've got visitor parking with the 3 major entities using the same system. One of the best kept secrets I think we have with the city of Williamsburg is the parking structure, the Prince George parking structure, where if people give finance their credit card, they can just drive in and out, and the license plate readers will read their license plate and they'll bill their account. So you don't need an app to actually park in the parking structure, and that rate is very competitive at $1 an hour, correct? So we've made progress on that second dot point. Paid parking, which we'll come back to, staff was recommending on-street parking be paid. We can talk about that later. Adjusting fines, I know we had some adjustment, I'm not sure it's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah, we did adjust the fines, but we're still, I don't think we adjusted them enough. That initial ticket has to be high enough that it makes an impact on the parker. Otherwise, it just becomes a fee to park in that lot all day. And so I think that we could still make some adjustment there.
Yeah, and I think there was resistance to going above $10 on
That's
that
right.
initial one by a previous member of City Council.
Right.
So, hiring the ambassadors with extended hours. So we've done that. Do we have the extended hours for the ambassadors?
Yeah, so we dipped our toe in this. We hired a couple of ambassadors and began trying to build a training program. In the middle of that was COVID and the chamber turnover. And the chamber really is the entity that we would rely on to help us build the curriculum for the ambassadors. In addition to that, budgetarily, we were not able to budget for all of the officers and the times that we wanted them to be. In the current proposed budget, though, that is addressed. So moving forward, this item will be taken care of.
Okay, electronic citations and enforcement. We're doing that now?
Yes, we did. The new passport system gave us electronic citations and better enforcement tools.
So, and then payment application, we just talked about the passport system. What about, and public safety escort program, do we have?
No, we have not tackled that one yet.
One of the challenges has always been in Merchant Square, I think, employee parking. Where do we stand with that now?
Yeah, so I mean that is one of the challenges. Colonial Williamsburg has made stronger efforts to encourage employees to park in their employee lot. They even went back and offered the shuttle for a while. It didn't get a lot of use. I think, as you pointed out, the improvements that they've made to parking lots eventually spreads to those employee lots, and that will help encourage usage there as well. But ultimately, I think that the hardest problem to solve is where do students and employees generally park, whether they're employees of the university or employees of the foundation, because those two segments drive a lot of our parking policy.
Okay, now, how much did we spend implementing the passport system?
So, a couple different things here. When we initially, if you recall, and Drew touched on it, when we implemented the original system, it was New Park. New Park was what was acquired by Passport. The initial installation for New Park was about $81,000.
And then did we have to add to it when Passport?
Passport is all fee-based, so there's a minimum amount that they get every month regardless, but then they obviously get more because every person that parks is getting hit with a 35-cent charge.
And we pay an annual maintenance fee every year, but the big difference between Passport and the system that we're moving to is, I think, 35 cents of every transaction goes directly to Passport.
So we've been talking about being able to find parking spaces and being able to have the turnover. What reports do we get from the ambassadors to tell us that we have a problem there? In other words, do we have reports on a weekly basis that tell us how many motorists the ambassadors are helping and how many of them are actually complaining that they can't find parking?
No, we don't get those reports right now, mainly because we've not been able to staff those positions as fully as we'd like, and also because the license plate reader software is not as accurate in terms of determining occupancy, so it would largely be anecdotal on behalf of the ambassador themselves. That's part of the problem we're trying to fix, is we'd like to get better data on occupancy.
Now, taking a look at parking regulations downtown, we currently, in my mind, successfully ensure regular turnover in parking spaces through time limit signs ranging from 15 minutes, 30 minutes to 1 hour in high demand hours.
We can as long as we do better job with enforcement, and then that would mean raising the fines and doing a lot more ticketing than we do right now. We're not as aggressive as we need to be, which has always been the problem with the time limits. If you remember, before we went to the ambassador program that we have now, which is lighter than we want it to be, we had a part-time parking officer one that really only did, I'm going to get the hours wrong, but it seems like it was 9 to 2 every day. And so sort of the peak hours, really, there was no enforcement.
Well, several questions for the project. And the first one, I think, is do we really need to import big city programs for our small college town? Now, without any data that motorists are complaining in large numbers about their inability to find parking spaces, is this the classic example of developing a solution in search of a problem? On Thursday, staff will ask City Council to approve $1.2 million for a new parking system and commit to annual costs of $627,000. We really need the public to weigh in to determine is the public benefit worth $3.7 million over 5 years. Putting that into context, we know from our budget retreat that each 1 cent of our real estate rate funds $235,000 of city costs. So last year, when City Council raised the real estate rate from 60 cents per $100 of assessed value to 64 cents, looking at this in perspective, spending $1.2 million is equivalent to more than 5 cents of a real estate tax rate. Annual costs, if we go to the annual costs of $627,000 for maintenance of this package, that's equivalent to 2.6 cents of the real estate rate. So once again, this is the opportunity for our taxpayers to send us their comments as to whether this new parking system is a need or is it a want. And unfortunately, the public forum and Thursday's meeting comes after the City Council vote. So do you have any other recommendations in terms of how the public can give us comments before that vote?
I think that the same way they always have, they can send us emails, they can give us calls. I think that so far, in my experience with Williamsburg, that's not been a challenge.
What was the last sentence?
I said, so far in my experience here in Williamsburg, that's not been a challenge.
Oh, okay. And we'll have at least one edition of the Gazette before that. So, okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ramsey?
At this point, I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Thanks for the presentation, Drew. I know it's been a conversation the city's had for, as shown, many years now. Just to reiterate, this is a presentation. Thursday is the action to go forward with fiber, but the public wouldn't see any changes towards the parking rate for many months, certainly until they would have an opportunity to weigh in. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This decision has no bearing on whether or not we charge for parking or change how we charge for parking in the future. This is really just about new hardware and software. The decision to charge is up to the City Council, and whether or not we go any further on that list of possible changes largely is determined by what the data shows when we get it back. If we are able to accomplish what Mr. Maslin just talked about through get the turnover that we need through better enforcement and proper fines, then the city staff, I can tell you, is in no hurry to start collecting revenue on street spaces or changing the revenue model that we have. It's really just about providing a better experience for the user. Understood. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Mr. Trivett, you had mentioned residential parking. So technology would be deployed into the neighborhoods that have permit parking now. That's right. Yeah, one of the complaints that we do get quite a bit is over abuse of the permit system, particularly in the residential neighborhoods. And this system will make it much harder to abuse. And so like I say, we'll have much better data on occupancy. We'll also have much better data on permits themselves, and it'll allow us to do better enforcement in the residential neighborhoods. So I think we'll see improved availability of spaces even in the residential sections. Because as I understand it, part of this technology for the residents in those districts, they would have an easy pass, so to speak, rather than a sticker on a window. Right. And a guest pass would be a similar technology. Yes. That guest pass wouldn't be able to be passed along to anybody to park anywhere in that colored district, whereas with the guest pass, they're only supposed to park in front of the house of which they're a guest. That's right. So this software and hardware solution installs what we'd like to call smart city technology. It's a communication network that allows sensors for all things, trash cans and air pollution and light sensors, to communicate back to a central hub and allow us to collect and analyze that data.
By installing that, we're able to do what we consider to be fairly innovative technology to replace our current sticker permit system with, as you said, an Easy Pass unit. It's a small unit. It's about 3 inches by 2 inches that you put in your car that communicates with the system and tells us where that permit is in relationship to the spaces that you're allowed to occupy. And so it allows us to better understand how those spaces are being used during the day and night, as well as how often a guest pass maybe is used consecutively, which is the way that we enforce against that. So pretty innovative technology that certainly will give us a much better understanding of what's happening even in the residential neighborhoods.
So a resident with that Easy Pass would be able to use that technology to go into a paid parking downtown without having to go onto an app, register that they're there, and pay for the parking, because the technology would recognize that you're in a paid parking and then automatically bill you.
That's right. Yes. So basically what it does, what this system will do is for those people who are already using the drive-in, drive-out feature at the parking garage, it expands that capability to anywhere that that this software is used. Now, it is our hope that William & Mary will join us in this effort. Colonial Williamsburg has already agreed. So anywhere that you park downtown, if you're a residential permit holder, your permit is going to interact with the system and handle fees and charges from the lots, whether you're parking in a CW lot, in the city garage, or where have you. And then hopefully eventually we'd like to expand that to William & Mary so that if you're a professor that also lives downtown, you have one permit to rule them all that will handle your parking transactions no matter where you go in the city. That's what we're after. We really think that adds the convenience level that people are asking for and will give us that positive experience that we're shooting for.
And so any resident of the city could get this Easy Pass. You don't have to live in a residential neighborhood that has parking, restricted parking.
That's right.
Okay, so again, I think that would offer a benefit to the residents as they move around town.
Yep, the idea behind this is that if you are a frequent user of parking downtown and you don't want to use the app system, then you get this Easy Pass, as we're calling it, to put in your car, and it handles that transaction for you automatically. So you don't have to worry about how to pay for parking and how long you've parked. It's all handled through that one system.
But if you did use the app, you would be able to head into town and recognize where there's space available and head right there versus just circling around.
That's right. The way that the sensors work is they actually less than a second in terms of reporting that somebody has pulled into the space. So when you pull up the app, it shows you a heat map of where there's available spaces and where there's not. So if you're on your way to downtown or you're leaving the house, you can save a lot of time by looking in advance to see where there's parking.
I have one question from your comments. Mayor Pons was talking about the guest passes, and we often hear complaints of the abuse of guest passes. And right now, we don't have a way to monitor them. So if a student uses a guest pass and parks in front of someone's house 3 weeks or 2 months at a time, there's no way to really sort of catch them.
Right, it's very difficult for us to monitor that now, and with this system we'll have a much better sense of the data. We would know that that particular guest pass has been used every day for the last 45 days and be able to inquire as to why. And that's not to imply that we're going to be heavy-handed with that. I think anybody that lives in downtown now and lives in one of the permitted areas knows if you're having work done at your house, if you've got a guest that's coming over, if you're having a party, all you have to do, we're small enough, to Mr. Maslin's point, you can call the police department and make arrangements for that, and that will still continue to be our touch with this. But it will give us, in those situations of sort of egregious violations, a way to address it.
Thank you.
Okay, so with this technology, it seemed to me that if and when if we deploy this new technology and we get into parking fees, that city residents with this permit could essentially automatically get a discount if that's what was the decision. I mean, we have, with this technology, we would have that dynamic capability of pricing for parking.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this system will really give us a lot of options that we don't have now in terms of how we collect revenue from spaces that are for fee.
That's all the questions I have. Any other questions?
No,
Mr. Rogers? No? All right, well, I look forward to the discussion on Thursday. All right, takes us to City Council communications. Does anybody have anything they wish to share? On the agenda, you have the schedule of meetings. Just a reminder, the city offices will be closed on President's Day, which is February 1st, or 21st, rather. Nothing else. Takes us now to open forum, which is again an opportunity for people to come forward and share their thoughts. Seeing none, I'll close the open forum. We do not have any items for closed session, so that's been removed from the agenda, which leads us to adjournment.
So I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
All right,